Hey, you all. Today we are turning our attention to the work of Michel Foucault, who was born in 1926 and died in 1984. So we're talking about it, certainly a more contemporary thinker than some of the other people that we have been dealing with. Some of you may have heard of him. He's one of these philosophers who manages to cross a lot of disciplinary boundaries. He's read a lot. Literature, English, history, sociology, just a very influential intellectual character. He wrote a lot about power structures and how systems of organization execute or maintain power. One of his most famous concepts was something called the panopticon. Some of you may have heard of this, which was a prison that has a central tower and then cells that exist on the outside. And it's sort of this big brother mentality that the concept was, even if you don't know that you're being watched, the fact that you know that the tower is there and could potentially always be watching you creates a certain sort of conformity of behavior. So he was really fascinated in the way that we as humans respond to various modes or methods to constrain and make us conform. Another place that he was really interested, or that he wrote a lot about, was Victorian culture and the ways that Victorian culture maintained a certain cult of the body, or a certain attitude towards power and the body and these sorts kinds of things. So overall, we would characterize Michel Foucault's thinking as involving values and how we liberate values and how we can have freedom from these sorts of systems that try to contain us and try to force us to conform. So, being someone that was so, I guess, broad in his interests, he did turn his attention to art. And this essay on Las Meninas is actually very famous, and I find it to be extremely fascinating. I told you all that I'm a big fan of Kant, but I have to say that this one essay is probably my favorite in all of aesthetics, because it encapsulates so much into this really a pretty short and readable essay. And I like that he uses this very specific work of art to extrapolate a much larger aesthetic theory that we'll see relates to many of the themes that we've been dealing with so far in the semester. Certainly this question of how art or representation relates to a moral education, right? I mean, this was the first question that Plato started asking, is like, how does art either bring us to a higher place morally or a lower place? Of course, we know that he said it detracted from our ethics or our ethical way of being, and it detracted from our ability to attain knowledge. Foucault, on the other hand, thinks that art does educate. It should educate, and it can educate us in a positive moral direction. Also related to Plato, he was interested in this idea of the mirror. And if you've already had a chance to look at the essay, read the essay, you'll see that this issue of the mirror is very important to Foucault's idea of representation, but also this specific painting, because the mirror itself in this work of art plays such a central role. Along with that, we have the issue of the hidden and the revealed. You know, the painting, just even in the specifics of this particular painting, there's so much of this interplay between what is revealed to us as a viewer, what is hidden from us, like we can't see what's on the canvas, but yet we do see the reflection in the mirror. We do see the painter, which is unusual, right? That there's always this kind of back and forth between, any work of art, even as accidental or chaotic as it may seem, we know there's an intention behind it. We know that there was an artist behind it. And in this case, the artist is in the work of art itself. So that's an important issue that Foucault wants to highlight. And then involved with that too is this question of the role of the audience. Okay, so if we're thinking, and we have been thinking all along about how we define art, how do we come up with these clear definitions of what art is, how much of that involves the role of the audience? How much does art depend on a viewer to interact with it? Does an artwork only become an artwork if it has been viewed by an audience? And so this is something we're actually going to come back to even in a few weeks when we talk about Tom Wolfe and the abstract expressionists. Could a conceptual art piece be so conceptual that it happens in a place where there isn't even a viewer? Foucault would say that's absolutely impossible, because for Foucault, the artist... for the artwork to even exist as an artwork, it has to have an audience, and the audience has to participate. Not only does the audience has to participate or have to participate, the audience is forced to participate, right? Because if you've looked at this essay already, or if you looked at the material that's already in the unit, you see that we are literally drawn into this piece. We are reflected back as the very subjects of this piece, in this case, the King and Queen of Spain. And in so doing, the artist, Velázquez, has made us an essential element of this work of art, and therefore has taught us that we must see ourselves in the mirror of the painting, thereby seeing ourselves as the king and queen, and then changing ourselves accordingly, then changing our behavior to be that matches the court, royalty. So you see there at the very end, there's this tremendous moral message, this moral teaching that comes out in the end, where we not only become a participant in the painting, but we are called to a higher standard to change ourselves in what we see in the mirror. So a few of the things I wanted to say about Foucault. Another essay that he wrote was on authorship. What is an author? How do we understand an author? He, similar to Nietzsche, wanted to be able to look at our life as a work of art. So his definition is extremely involved and extremely related to how we can become moral agents in our experience of the work of art. So